It's England and Scotland again tonight, but it's not in the same backyard. Welcome to Hollywood Bowl's Euro special. It's also a huge welcome back, Geordie legend Lee Clark, by popular demand. He's here to tell us what it feels like to be a manager, because I'm going to put him on the spot tonight. But firstly, I've got to say to you, in that role, England, Czech Republic tonight, we were just talking off air from a fan's perspective. The fans are going to want to see, they're through, we know that, but the fans are going to want to see an improved effort, aren't they?
Well, listen, Pete, firstly, thanks again for welcoming us on your show. Enjoy it. So I like getting the opinion out to the fans out there. And, you know, what you've got to do for tournament football, you've got to build momentum and you've got to try and improve on the last performance. And that's what Gareth will be looking for. He'll be looking to get a win and a result to win the group. And players will be looking for self-confidence in their performance. So, you know, it's a huge game. It's a huge game. It's a huge evening for the whole group. The four teams that are still fighting to try and get through, whether it be first place, second place, one of the best third place finishes. It's a real exciting evening, and I'm sure Gareth and his players will be looking to improve on the last performance against Scotland and obviously get the win. That'll allow them to top the group.
But also as well, he's got so many decisions to make because of the squad he's got. Really, it's like pigeonholing so many different players, because, you know, some people are saying, "Oh, Grealish has got to start, Sancho's got to start." So again, it's a thankless task as a boss, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I've only dealt with this at club level, and it's hard enough then when you're dealing with players. You know, and I always say to the players, make my job really difficult at the end of the week when I've got to pick a team. Make sure that I'm in a bit of trouble. I'm showing a lot of anxiousness because I've got so many years to pick from. And then unfortunately, you've got to upset people, and you're not leaving people out then because they're not playing poorly. It's only because you can pick 11. Now, when you're a national team manager, and certainly Gareth Southgate with the players that he's brought through and the youngsters that are coming through and the quality, I mean, you've got outstanding players who will be in the starting 11. You've got outstanding players who will be on the bench and come on, and you'll have outstanding players who won't even get on the pitch and mightn't even be named in the nominated substitutes. So you're having to deal with all that scenario. You haven't, you know, I was always told and I was always reminded, and it was a good saying from one of my former coaches about the most important people in your playing squad are the lads not. You need to keep them motivated. You need to keep them happy because they've got to keep driving the 11 that are on the pitch to say, listen, you make one slip up in your personal performance and I'm ready to take your shirt. So it is really tough. You rattled off a few players there. There's going to be changes tonight because of the COVID situation involved in Gilmore. That's then progressed to Chilwell and Mason Mount. I'm hoping from a selfish point of view that one of my young prodigies, one of the last young players are convinced to come into the Birmingham Academy, Jude Bellingham, gets that vote. That would be a personal thing in my family. My young son Bobby's very good friends with Jude and his younger brother Job. So, and as I said, I got to know the boys. He was a 9 and 10-year-old, and this is just like dream come true stuff. And he's such a terrific kid. So from a personal and selfish point of view, I hope Jude gets the nod for the Mason Mount position.
George, big game, England, isn't it? I mean, in more ways than one. As Lee's just said, you've got players who are going to be proving a point if there are different players playing. I mean, I'm hearing that Henderson could be back, Maguire. What's your take on it?
Well, you know, I think it feels like Gareth Southgate and the team feel as though they have a point to prove. England were second best against Scotland. That never feels good if you're an England player, right? So they feel that. I think they'll want to put the record straight tonight, and I think they will. I think they'll have their best game of the tournament so far, which some could argue isn't saying much. But I think the pressure's on, and I think England will perform today. I really do.
So we've got it from the horse's mouth. If George says it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. Speaking as a gaffer, though, Lee, one of the things that I was very lucky enough to do, and the fans know that I was invited when you were the boss at Birmingham. I went and I watched the training. I watched it all week. From the training ground, but even into the boardroom where you mapped everything out. You had videos of the opposition. But one thing that stuck with me was you said, once they go over that white line, you can't do anything, can you?
No, we try and get the message across, we shout, and we run around that technical area like lunatics. And basically, you know, you can't. The players are focused. They're in the zone. They're not, unless you're passing messages on while there's stops in play. But ultimately, it is. You know, we talked off air there. You know, when you mentioned you wanted it from a managerial viewpoint, I said, "Whoa, really? Do the people want to hear it from that viewpoint?" Because ultimately, it's management is a tough old game. It's a terrific game to be involved in. But you bear the weight of club management, of support as an office staff. But when you're an international manager like Gareth Southgate is, he's bearing it of the nation. Everybody, you know, gets involved. People who really aren't interested in football most of the time, they're always back there watching the England games and these big competitions. And when you win, the players, rightly so, they take the plaudits and you pass the best wishes on to the players and you give them all the encouragement. But when you lose, it's the manager who's still scrutinised. So it's you must wonder why us crackpots get involved in management, to be honest with you. But as you said, once you've done your work, your preparation work, it's about you then relying on your players to deliver the game plan that you've put out and them to play the best game. I always used to say that to my players. Make sure this game, your next game, is the best one of your career. Because if it is, and you have 7 of those players out of the 11, you play very well as a team. If you start getting lower than that, it becomes a bit dubious, the result. And certainly if you get below 5, you're in desperate trouble. You're probably going to lose. So these are all the factors. But, you know, it's tough because there's millions of people wanting to be like think they know more than Gareth Southgate, and tonight they'll be shouting at their TVs and their radios or whatever, telling
a million Southgates.
Yeah, absolutely, telling them he's picked the wrong team. Why hasn't he picked him? And ultimately, he hasn't picked all of them because we can't fit them all in the 11. We can't play like Phil Foden at centre half. You know what I mean? It's like.
I mean, being a manager is a very difficult thing. Being the manager of a country like England, I mean, he deserves every penny he gets. It's a tough job. But as a manager, Lee, it strikes me. I mean, I love the game. I never played it at a professional level. I played at amateur level. But it strikes me that much of the game is about confidence. It's about mental strength. How as a manager do you go about sharing that confidence, making your players feel brave, making them feel comfortable, making the difficult decision to go for it rather than play a defensive safe ball, for example? How do you give them confidence? How do you think about that, Lee?
Yeah, George, I think the point's absolutely brilliant. I think certainly all eras of football, it was down to that. And different eras handling in a different way, but players now, the top clubs, sports psychologists, mindfulness, all these different specialists looking after the players because they're under intense pressure. And I know the old adage, they get paid ridiculous amounts of money, but whatever money you get or earn, it doesn't mean that you don't have feelings. You don't feel hurt if you play poorly or you haven't been picked. But in terms of the confidence, you have to tell the players that you expect to win every game. You want to win every game, no matter who your opponent is. And you give them a game plan to go and be positive. And if that game plan doesn't work, you as the manager will bear the brunt. And as long as they try to take on board what you've done and they try to implement that game plan, you'll back them 100%. And, you know, that's how I do it. I always say to my players in the final third, do what you've got to do. Take people on, have shots, get crosses in. And if it doesn't work, if you have a shot that goes over the bar, goes wide, if you get the next opportunity, do the same again. Don't worry about the last one. If you try and take somebody on and he tackles you, it doesn't matter. Try and take him on the next time. If you're trying to do the slide rule pass and it gets cut out, doesn't matter. Try it again. And if players do that and they're trying to do the right thing, not a problem. The time I get upset with players is if they don't implement the game plan, they don't be brave, they take the easy route, and because what you usually see with a lot of players is, like, if they do that, when the game goes beyond them, they then come out of that shell because they've got nothing to lose, and you think, well, why haven't they played like that for the last 70 minutes or so rather than the last 20? And you see that in so many football matches. And fans, I hear the fans say, we were brilliant last week, why didn't we start like that? And that's down to the mentality. That's down to the, oh, well, what we've got to lose now, we're 2 or 3-0 down, we might as well have a go. What's the point? You know, if we misplace a pass now, it's not going to affect the result. But while it's 0-0, and I'm thinking, well, if I do something, I might make a mistake. But if you're making a mistake at the top end of the field, surely you've got enough players and enough quality to eradicate that. And even if you don't, you've got to just keep backing people. You know, you just say it. And takes me on to the point with the Harry Kane issue. You know, the calls for, oh, Harry's not firing on all cylinders, do we leave him out? It's absolutely crazy. You know, us managers ask for time and support, and when we say support from fans, the support is important when you go through the tough times. So believe me, players need that. They do everything for you. Good players and good pros like Harry Kane, they're top players, and every manager they play for, they give everything. And when they go through a little bit of a lean spell, you have to back them. You have to show the players that, listen, I'll back you. As long as you're trying to give me everything, even when you have your little barren spell or your lean spell and you're not at the top of your A game, I'll keep playing you. We'll work through it. Because if players see you dismiss them just after 1 or 2 bad performances, you're going to be chopping and changing the team all the time. And listen, I seen the article that Alan wrote, Shearer, and this is so reminiscent of the Euro 96 when Alan went into the competition on the back of a 10-11 game run without scoring. He smashed that first goal in the group stage, and it just went from strength to strength. You kind of tell me, you know, Harry Kane, name on the team sheet, frightens the opposition. That's another factor. If you're getting the team sheet and 1 hour before kick-off and you see Harry Kane's name is not on it, you are delighted as a manager and an opponent.
Absolutely.
If you see it, because they know, you know, class, it's permanent. Form's just, temporary. Class is permanent. He's been He's been a shining light again this season for an average Spurs team, and you know he's our talisman. He'll be working every day like these strikers do to get that goal, working hard. And Gareth's well right to keep backing him. He's his captain, and it goes without saying.
Well said,
I
George.
Agree more.
Speaking of Euros, a bit of a Belgian masterclass yesterday.
Yeah, well played, Belgium. I did feel sorry for Finland. Clearly the underdogs. They worked their socks off. Defensively, Finland did very well. And it was just unfortunate. The 2 goals they conceded, one was an own goal through the goalkeeper, who was fantastic last night.
Yeah.
And it was just very unlucky. It just bounced off the bar, hit his hand. He couldn't do anything about it. And the second goal was a deflection. So I felt a little bit deflated for the Finns. But Belgium were just a different class. They were just a different class. You know,
Lukaku's a monster, isn't he?
Yeah, Lukaku's a monster. And they played good, free-flowing football, right? And this is what I like about teams like Belgium and certainly the Italians, who are my favourite. You know, Lee, to your point, these teams are playing without fear. They're playing with confidence. They have an extra spring in their step. They go for the difficulties. They never take the easy option, right? And it's a pleasure to watch. And I think most England fans want to see that from England, right? You know,
Yeah,
in fairness.
George, listen, George, you're talking Italians. They've gone 30 games unbeaten now. The last 13 games, they haven't conceded a goal. I was lucky enough when I was manager of Huddersfield to go 43 games unbeaten. And you know what? You don't have to do team talks. You don't have to do practices. The players are playing with confidence. They're playing with momentum. You just need to just keep them ticking over. It's like when you're in a losing streak, you're wondering how you get out of it. When you're in a winning run or an unbeaten run like that, the players they're buzzing. They just keep going. They keep getting stronger. And you know, Italians, you know, Mancini. I always felt that he was really appreciated at Man City for all the good things he done. I don't think he got the credit he really deserved there. I seen how hard I worked at close quarters. I was lucky enough to be at their training ground a few times. And, you know, with the Italian mentality. I mean, what was the second game of the group? They won 3-0 Italy. And Cellini blocked a shot in the 94th minute and he jumped up as if he was scored a hat-trick because he was keeping a clean sheet. This was the mentality of him. And they've got some fantastic attacking players. But when you talk about fantastic players, you mentioned Belgium, you cannot look any further than the magician, that Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne, wow, what a football. I mean, people used to say part of my good armoury was me passing. Well, I'm a million miles away, sorry, from what Kevin De Bruyne can produce. I mean, that outside of the foot pass for Lukaku's headed goal the other night, last night is just... Kevin, I see him do it in the Premier League all the time, seen it doing it with Belgium. It's no fluke. You know what you do with Kevin De Bruyne now? When he misplaces a 60-yard pass, you're disappointed. Because his standards are that high.
Speaking of another midfielder that we both know, who was in black and white, I thought Gini Wijnaldum for Holland was absolutely incredible. Very unlucky not to get a hat-trick, but what a performance from him.
Yeah, Wijnaldum is a big player, and he was a big player for Newcastle, and he had that crazy streak, didn't he, where he was scoring in all the home games, but he couldn't score away. And I think he's played a little bit more of a deeper type of role for Liverpool, and under the success under Klopp with the Premier League and the Champions League, etc. But with Holland, they've got him, you know, breaking from midfield. Depay does great on one of the goals, but Wijnaldum getting into the box. And he's got the coolness of an attacking player, the way he finishes. So he's done great. Listen, it's a tough competition to call because we've rattled off Belgium, Italy, the Netherlands. We're talking about England. You've still got France and Germany and Portugal and Spain.
It's anyone's, isn't it?
Come on, man! It's like crazy. You've got the fighting spirit of the Danes because they're fighting for Ericsson. You know you know that last night was pure emotional football. That stuff
beautiful.
From Denmark last night. That is like
it was called a fairy tale result.
Well,
that's what it was called.
That's the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. When that gets struck and you see that and you're watching it, it's like, wow, it's like, what a feeling, you know, and it's like these big competitions, they bring out these moments for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, that's why it's called the beautiful game, man. That's why it's called the beautiful game.
Totally agree, George. I cannot wait for tonight. And I'm one of these. I'm the same in the domestic football with the North East clubs. I would love to see Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough in the Premier League. I was delighted that one of our local clubs in the North East, Hartlepool, get back into the Football League the other day under really crazy circumstances. And the same with the home nations. I want England, I want Scotland, I want Wales to be in the last 16. I want all to be there because I just think it's phenomenal and it's great for British football and there's still a chance it can happen.
Speaking of Scotland, all they have to do tonight is win 1-0. That's it. Well, but it's in their own hands, isn't it?
That's right.
It is. But what a blow they've had when the most outstanding player from the England-Scotland game has to miss it through the COVID. Billy Gilmore. And remember seeing that boy at 15 playing for Rangers under 20 against Kilmarnock's under 20 when I was manager, and I thought, wow, this is a tiny little unbelievable footballer. And you know what else it's done? It's put about the myth about the big player. Yes, you know, it's good to have big, athletic, powerful footballers who can play, but there's still some of these little guys who can do the business, and he was outstanding against England. And I think that's a massive hammer blow tonight. I would have loved, what a comparison that would have been tonight. Billy Gilmore to start his career against another little tiny, awesome footballer, Luka Modric, come to the end of his career. The two of them. One who's seen there, been there, done it, got the medals, got the trophies, been an outstanding professional, got a record number of caps for Croatia, and now to the new potential superstar of Scottish football. Do you know Scottish football now is starting to get back to where it was in the 80s, when most English clubs had a superstar Scottish player in their team? You know, Souness's and your Dalglish's,
Roy Aitken.
There were plenty of them. Yeah.
I played alongside Roy, and he got many a bollocking off Jim Smith.
No, but it is. I agree. I think it's so refreshing to see a good Scottish team back again. Right? It's a crying shame Gilmore can't play. It's a big game tonight, and I have everything crossed for Scotland. I will say that, everything crossed.
No, I totally agree with you, George. I want it to happen. I want all three of us to be there. Hey, listen, even in defeat the other night when they qualified Wales, they put up a stirring performance with a controversial sending off of Ampadu that meant them down to 10 men against one of the outstanding teams in Italy. And I thought Wales really, really fought and battled to get that. You know, people say, well, they lost. It was 1-0. A loss is a loss. Of course it is. But, you know, when you play like that with 10 men, you come in as a manager and staff and players, it feels like a win. And it gives them the confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very proud of that performance. If I was Welsh, I'd be delighted. I mean, as you say, the Italians haven't conceded a goal in 11 games. They're 1-0 down to 10 men for 35 minutes. And you had a golden opportunity, and if you want it to fall to anyone, you want it to fall to Gareth Bale, right?
On his left foot as well.
On his left leg, and he puts it over. I couldn't believe it. It's a beautiful game.
George, listen, I've got a bit of news for you, because I was thinking of you today. That there was some breaking news on my wires, and I thought I can't wait for tonight to ask George about this. Our George loves his La Liga. There's a quote out today saying that the Barca president, Mr. Joan Laporte, is trying to bring Ronaldo to Barcelona to play alongside Messi. What do you think about that?
It's the stuff that dreams are made of. I can't see it happening.
Fantasy dream.
Well, look, Barca are 1.2 billion euros in debt. How you gonna make that happen? I don't know. I mean, Ronaldo
will probably put them to 2 billion then.
Yeah, I reckon Ronaldo can buy Barcelona
easily.
I tell you what, us football fans, us football purists would love that though. What an they're both. I mean, you're still seeing what they're doing on the international stage with Messi for Argentina and the Copa America now, and Ronaldo was doing for Portugal in these Euros. And imagine when I talk about team sheets coming in, you're the opposition manager, and them two up front against you. I mean. I think you'd be looking for special dispensation just to name 2 goalkeepers in the starting 11, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no different to any other fan. Ronaldo and Messi in the same team, I would walk barefoot over hot coals to get to that game, right?
Without that.
What a dream.
Got to ask you, because we always do this, Lee, for our fans. As a manager, we normally ask players, but as a manager, who's the best? And you've been at some great clubs, and by the way, I reel off time and time again how many players that you've looked after, you've coached, whether it was Kilmarnock, whether it was Birmingham, Huddersfield, you name it. Who's the best? Who's had the best attitude to the game for you as a manager, as one of your players?
Oh, that's a difficult question, Peter, because as I said, that Huddersfield squad I had were a phenomenal group of guys. I've had players who've gone on to become Premier League winners, Danny Drinkwater and Damari Gray. I've had people like Jordan Rhodes, who I took from the lower leagues and was sold on for millions and millions of pounds. I've had Jesse Lingard on loan. I've had senior pros like your Stephen
He was standout
Claus.
for me. He was standout for me, Jesse. When I saw him training.
Jesse came to us, and you can tell, you know, what you can tell with the young players from these big clubs. You can tell straight away with their mentality. Everything they do, they want to do it to the best of their ability. Small-sided games in training, 5-a-side, 6-a-side, they want to win. They've got this winning mentality that's drilled into them at the big clubs because it's expected when you're there. And they have a fantastic work ethic. They know they have to work extremely hard. And Jesse had that in abundance. And he bought into our players straight away. I mean, it helps when you score 4 on your debut, man. But I mean, that was it. That was it. And everyone's saying you pulled off a master stroke. You're a genius of a manager. And I'm saying, are you real? Are you for real? How can you not spot talent like that when you go to watch him? It's easy. You know, it's...
if I spotted him.
Yeah, I spotted him. Pete, Geordie Pete, could I ask Lee a question? Is that okay?
Of course you can.
Lee, as a player, I mean, you're one of the few players who played for both Newcastle and Sunderland, right? As a player, who's the most difficult player you actually played against, would you say?
Wow. I have this question many times. I would say in the national and in the domestic scene, you'd probably be looking, I cannot separate them, Roy Keane and Paul Scholes.
Right.
And then when you think of the era that I was up against, they had Beckham in that era. They had Paul Gascoigne. They had Paul Ince. They had Steven Gerrard. They had Frank Lampard. They had Todd McAlealy. Had Michael Ballack. I probably looked at Vieira and Petit. I remember going to Highbury and in that tight tunnel, me and David Batty, the two little dogs of war, playing against Petit and Vieira, the two beasts with world class ability. We beat them because we went toe to toe with them. But you know,
I love it. Where's Super Kev when you need him? Love it.
Super Kevin Campbell. He loved the battle as well, doesn't he?
Oh, Kev did. I mean, but listen, in the international stage, in the European stage, I cannot look beyond Zidane. He was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was a big fella and he could handle himself. Just like another player who people just know him and remember him for his elegance, Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah.
Dennis Bergkamp was superb, sublime footballer, but he could look after himself.
Yeah, absolutely. He was tough as nails.
And do you know when I played against one person, he was coming towards his end, it was at Everton. But I knew him, we grew up together. I was a couple of years younger, and I watched him and I seen him develop. And if it wasn't for the injury in the FA Cup final, would have become the best player in the world, and that's Paul Gascoigne.
Yeah.
I seen him from close up. I seen him from afar. I played against him in his Everton days. I mean, even when he went back to Glasgow Rangers, a big club, from his time at Lazio, he's adored up there. You should see some of the things he done, the goals, and they just honestly, it's that was it was a tough year to be a midfield player, I tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Paul Gascoigne, if he didn't get that injury in the final against Nottingham Forest, he would have gone to become the world's best player.
I've got no doubt, George. I've got no doubt. I
mean, I saw him. I saw almost every game he played for Spurs for a couple of years, right? It's just, it was Roy the Rover stuff. You know, he was carrying the team.
Yeah, exactly. Can you remember just after the World Cup, he carried the team to that FA Cup final? Remember some of the goals he was scoring in that competition?
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's like when you're the best player at school and you used to just get the ball off the goalkeeper and take the whole team on and score. That's what he was doing to teams.
Yeah. And if you ask Alex Ferguson, he's very famous for saying, when he was asked which player would you have liked to manage that he didn't manage, I think the first player comes to mind that he says is Paul Gascoigne. He
said it. He said just lately in the interview with Gary Neville, and Paul's got the story about he decided to go to Spurs because they got his sister a sunbed.
Sunbed, and he's got his dad a Jag. Listen, Ronnie's on our good friend Ronnie Beyond. He says, Lee, did you play against a young Cristiano Ronaldo? Did you ever cross paths with him?
I did, and there's actually a great bit of footage where he flicks the ball over my head on the touchline. I still to this day don't know how he's done it. I was going into smash. I was going into 2-foot him and smash him, and all of a sudden his ball's over my head.
The ball's
he's away.
gone.
And he was gone as well.
Listen, before I go, I've been doing some reading, George. We know there's a Spurs book on the way to you from the US, from our good friends at Mooney and Lambert, but I've been doing some reading as well. And just so happens that I'm reading this. It's Lee Clark's book,
Lee
by
Clark,
the way.
yeah?
It's a shameless plug for Lee. If you want to read a good book, by the way, because it's not just all about Newcastle. It's a fantastic read. Managerial players, go get it. Black and white, no grey areas. Lee Clark, absolutely fantastic. I'm going to give you your last code. Up we go. George, it's been fantastic. It's fascinating, isn't it, to see who Lee's been up against in his career.
Lee, I would love you to join us in the Football App family. We call that the TFA family, right?
I will join that 100%.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's lovely.
Well, there we go. We've got another member of TFA. We've got your last code. We've had a fantastic evening. Enjoy the games tonight, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Come on, England. Come on, Scotland.